countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Shine on, harvest moon, up in the sky. I ain't had no lovin' since January, February, June, or July.
I don't know where to go with that, Chad.
Yeah, I got nothing.
We're opening up the shop.
We're gonna change the station and keep the doors open for those oldies that might wander in singing their favorite songs from yesterday for reasons we don't understand. There's a lot of things we don't understand, but that's what the show's for. We're going to seek understanding.
That's right. Understand this. It's that harvest time of year. It's still October, folks. It is October, and it's one of my favorite songs, Shine On Harvest Moon. It's all about getting some action here in the fall time before it gets too cold. And one thing that we hope that you get on this week is action in another way. Action with samurai swords and evil demons.
That's right, because while we might not get, at least here in the Philippines, pumpkin spiced lattes, because they don't have them. What we do get is plenty of sushi and manga and Japanese-inspired food and culture. So this was great.
Absolutely. I'm the host with the most, Danny Larson. I am joined by Jay Scott, my cousin that lives in the Philippines, as well as my other co-host, Chad Smith, who does not live in the Philippines, but I think enjoys sushi. Like, you like sushi, right?
Yeah. I just heard a story the other day where sushi wasn't around in the States until like the 60s.
Wow.
Strange.
It was considered a delicacy in the 80s.
And Ethan, my brother, who you just heard, was on our Watchmen show just last week. He's coming back because, of course, we're reading manga. And anytime that we read manga on this show, we, of course, have to have our manga expert.
No, wait, before we go too far, last week was all platitudes and everybody's patting us on the back and stuff, which is wonderful. Thank you. But Ethan, we got to give Ethan some props. He does so many things to move this show forward and keep the show going. And every time Ethan's on, he's bringing us something to help us stretch our boundaries. I appreciate that, dude. So cheers to you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well. And also, Andy's told me I was the best plug man in the business. So if you need comic book supplies or trading card supplies, please visit bcwsupplies.com. Use promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Save yourself 10% on stuff you're already going to buy. Also, go visit lastcomicshop.podcast.com.
Yes, yeah, that is the
save it for the end.
Yes, there will be time for all of that. But this is a manga show. Ethan wanted to read manga, and we, of course, will always say yes to that, given the fact that last year when we did One Piece, it became not only our most popular episode of 2023, it became the most popular episode of the Last Comic Shop of all time. It is dwarfing all of the other episodes we've ever released over the past 4 years. So call me crazy, but it seems like this manga thing could be kind of important.
A moneymaker, right?
People might not listen to this more than, I don't know, some issue of Valiant Comics.
Shots fired against Unity again, J.A.
Poor J.A. Come on, man. So, I'm very glad in general that anime and manga is so accepted nowadays. I get so many compliments when I wear manga t-shirts or anime t-shirts out in public, which I had never gotten in my entire life.
Yeah.
It used to be the thing that I would hide in the back of my closet.
Yeah, it was that VHS tape of some anime that you put it underneath your bed because you're kind of, I shouldn't be watching cartoons that are this sexy.
Yeah. Was it Golgo 13? Because I remember you should hide that one.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Ghost of the Shell where the first 5 minutes is all just naked.
In case we're doing Demon Slayer this week because again it's not only a super popular manga, but it was Ethan's pick. Like, if we're gonna do a manga and be able to reach them young kiddos and those old kiddos and everybody that likes manga, what should we read? And Ethan said Demon Slayer, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, because the Demon Slayer movie, Mugen Train, is the highest grossing Japanese movie of all time.
Wow.
Even more than Godzilla? Godzilla -1?
Yeah. No, I think
Godzilla -1 in black and white, which is the only way you should watch that movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it in black and white, you haven't seen it.
That's crazy, but it does speak again to the popularity of manga. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about on today's program is that giant question that's out there. We talk about comic books in America all the time, and we sometimes talk about European comic books. We don't do a lot of manga on this show. We're trying to broaden our horizons. But for some of us, it's one of those things where whether it's comfort food or it's what we're used to, we always gravitate towards what's going on with American comic books and the big two, Marvel, DC, and some of the indie books. But that's not what the folks that read comic books are actually reading. They're reading more manga. Like if you think about the total sales of manga throughout the entire world. In fact, I have some numbers. I know we've talked about this before. In 2024, the top-selling mangas thus far, according to Comic Book, in terms of number of volumes sold, the number one, Ethan, you want to give a guess?
Is it Demon Slayer?
It is not. It is Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in at number one with 4,630,000 copies sold just in 2024. The next one I've not heard of, Frieren Beyond the Journey's End. Got a take on that. Then you get into Apothecary Diaries at 3.7 million. One Piece, which is the first other one that I recognize on this, it's still coming in at number 4 with 2.1 million copies just sold in 2024. Chad, we do comic books all the time. If a comic book sold 2.1 million copies here in the United States, like if Amazing Spider-Man had sold that or what, we'd be talking about that.
I can't think of the numbers, the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I know some of the biggest comics were from the 90s. And I want to say Spider-Man was close to 3 million, and X-Force 1 was 5 million, and X-Men 1 was 7 million. And those are the top-selling comic books of all time.
Yeah. And that, again, that was in the 1900s. That's right. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah,
it wasn't this century. No, sir. It was almost 40 years ago that American comic books were selling that much. So my question is to everybody, and we're going to go ahead and start off with J.A. Why do you think manga is more popular worldwide than, American comic books or even, I guess, European comic books? Because they're not in that rarefied atmosphere either.
I think the simplified storytelling is easier to cross cultures. The stories, I think, are not nearly as complex, and they're sort of relying on archetypes that are present in a lot of different cultures. I think there's also been a global explosion in Asian culture. If you look at K-pop going massively global, manga and anime going global, these have taken over large swaths of the world in terms of what upcoming generations are looking at. I think also, and this is in sort of stark relief to what we were reading last week, they're very easily digestible. You can pour through them very quickly, and they get you hooked. As we're going to get into with Demon Slayer, every chapter ends with like a massive cliffhanger.
Right.
So I think it's easy to get sucked in, and before you know it, you've read, 30 issues or something of it.
Yeah. I do want to kind of piggyback on that just by simply saying we did read Watchmen last week. And the one thing that I was struck in sharp relief between Watchmen and this book is Watchmen would have huge blocks of text, just massive blocks of text with intricate language. And not all comic books are like that. When you got into Demon Slayer, I hate to say it, even the American translation, it was pretty easy for anybody to read it. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a sword. Pick up the sword. I gotta use the sword. Again, they spent a lot more time letting the art speak for what was happening, the action speak for what was happening, which, again, to your point, J.A., makes it easier to translate because you're not caught up in, like, the nuance of particular language and having to understand the language in order to understand what's going on in the story. So, yeah. I think that manga is more popular nowadays than comic books because manga is still written for folks between the ages of 8 and 16, or large swaths of it is. And that was what the Americans did for many, many years. And then all of a sudden they're like, we'll write comic books for 40-year-olds. Not to say that there aren't mangas that are written for those groups, but it's more of an all ages appeal. And I think when you do that, you expand the tent more.
So I do think you're painting with a little broad of a brush there. I think part of the appeal of manga is the fact that it is so varied. And if you're going to dig into it, you can find manga about table tennis. You can find manga about food. You can find manga about any topic under the sun, whereas American comics sort of got to superheroes or like crime noir, and they're like, oh, we'll stay here and do that. And so you get a much wider swath. But I also agree, Andy, that a lot of the ones that are most popular are the ones that are accessible to kids. There's something about the art style, and I honestly, I wouldn't have recognized this until, listening to Rob Liefeld's podcast, or Observations, where he discussed it in depth. But no, a lot of the 90s artists that I grew up loving, your Liefelds, your Eric Larsons, they were influenced by the action of manga. And so they would take that and render that out a little bit more, with that American style, but, try to keep that flavor a little bit. And so you do have some stories that can be faster paced. The fact is they are all over the board, but they also have those great entry level things. Like when we were kids, you picked up Amazing Spider-Man issue 329 and he's fighting the Tri-Sentinel, and you're like, I don't know what a Sentinel is, but this is pretty cool. But with manga, it's even better because they'll have volumes and it's there for a reasonable price. You get a thick story, even though it's a more condensed size. I feel like you're getting a bang for your buck there. So many are those quest stories and things like that are instantly relatable. They tap in the Joseph Campbell, the Young, the collective unconscious, and all that other stuff. And go back to Ethan's point where he wears his manga t-shirts and people are recognizing it. I feel like we talked about this like 10 years ago where it's like, hey, all our superhero t-shirts, it used to be you saw somebody in a superhero t-shirt and you're like, man, you're part of the club. And now it's like, oh, you shop at Target because it's everywhere. Superhero movies, they've gone through the pop culture. They've kind of been churned out. I wouldn't be surprised if manga is the next biggest thing. And instead of the MCUs, you're getting the biz entertainment and wreaking havoc all over Hollywood.
Old dudes like me, were fans of anime and manga in the dark days of the 90s when it wasn't cool to like anime. And now we have our children and we have, people that are younger than us that we can influence and tell them, hey, this is pretty cool. I think that's part of the, at least the American appeal. I think the other problem is, too, you go see Deadpool or Wolverine and you want to pick up a Deadpool book. Where the do you start?
And compared to a comic book that is 22 pages and you spend $5 on it, this is like, I don't know, like 100-something pages, and you spend a little bit more, but it's like 4 times the size. A lot more bang for your buck. So that can't be discounted. Real quickly, before we end this segment, Ethan, I wanted to ask you, because you're also a video game fan, do you feel like that a lot of the popularity of manga and anime has to deal with the fact it is cross kind of with the video game crowd? Very similar storylines and a lot of those, RPG games that are popular nowadays.
Yeah, but again, I think it goes back to, JRPGs. I mean, like, they have their own niche, but it's a niche now. I mean, you look at the most popular games, it's Fortnite, Minecraft, GTA, like a lot of Western games, like one of the most popular Japanese now that's Elden Ring. But again, it just goes back to my previous theory. Like, the people that grew up on Final Fantasy VII are dudes my age, like 35, 40 plus, so they're the ones that are going to be influencing, like I said, that next generation of kids out there, to tell them this is cool.
What about like Mobile Legends?
Yeah,
that's huge here.
Right.
Pokemon. The fact that manga and anime infiltrated our cartoons, they're planting flags early between Pokemon, Digimon, and then that leads kids into the Adult Swim, and they're watching Naruto and doing their Naruto runs and all that other stuff.
Right. Or Genshin Impact.
Yeah.
That one.
Any case.
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
Yeah.
EJ is a big Genshin Impact guy.
Yeah.
There you go. I guess my last question to everybody is, if you had somebody in the United States make manga, would it be as popular as Japanese manga? Because it's not just Japanese manga. Like, there's Korean manga, there's Chinese manga, there's tons of manga. And it goes back to our whole point which of the show, which is comic books are comic books. Whether it's manga, whether it's European comic books, whether it's American comic books, it's all the same. It's pictures and art telling a story. And I think we all can relate to that. But I was just curious. I mean, Scott Pilgrim was, quote unquote, an American manga. Why isn't that more popular? Why aren't there more American mangas?
2 words: Panda Express.
No, I get what he's saying. I get it. In any case, we'll be back with more of The Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks with our review of Demon Slayer Volume 1. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, you're saying the American versions are bad and pared down.
Yeah, there you go.
Correct.
Finally got it.
Oh.
Yeah.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at BCWSupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
When 6 teenagers are caught in a devastating storm, they wake up the next day with unimaginable abilities. Now the same storm that gave them their powers has awoken an ancient evil set on destroying their home and the world at large. And it's up to them to stop it. In a world without heroes, they're here to kick some ass. Read Born a Storm, a new ongoing series for free at Born a Storm Comic on Instagram. Hashtag Born a Storm.
And we're back. We are going to discuss today Demon Slayer Volume 1, Kimetsu no Yaiba. And I don't know if I said any of those words the right way. Let's go to J.A. You are our resident Sayer the right wayer. Tell us about the creatives involved in Demon Slayer Volume 1.
So Demon Slayer is by one person, writer, artist, Koyoharu Gotouge, who was born in 1989.
Wow.
You want to feel that your life hasn't amounted to much? 35
Him and
years
Taylor
old.
Swift.
I know, right?
Anyway, all right. Ethan, tell us what happens in Demon Slayer Volume 1.
Well, it's all about this kid named Tanjiro. He makes a living selling charcoal, and he's trying to buy a nice present for his gifts because he's the kindest, gentlest man in the entire world. And he has a sister named Nezuko. And unfortunately for Tanjiro, when he leaves to sell his charcoal, his family gets slayed by demons. And demon blood gets on Nezuko's wound and turns her into a demon. When he comes back to see all of his family slayed and Nezuko is a demon, he does not want his sister harmed. But a demon slayer comes to his house and tries to murder Nezuko, and Tanjiro stands up for her. And ultimately, the demon slayer sends him to an old man to get more training to become a demon slayer. And we go on our path.
Yeah. I was curious, though, about some of this, because there are some, like, traditional superhero tropes going on with this. One of the biggest tropes being the fact you got the hero and, like, you're introduced, all these characters end up not really mattering much to the rest of the story. It's like he's got these family, most of them you see for like 3 or 4 panels or 2 or 3 pages. Again, it's just to catapult him on his journey. Even the sister, by the time he meets the swords master and starts like learning the trade of being a demon slayer, she falls asleep for like a year. And she's
6 months.
She's just like, I'm going to take a nap so you can get around with the rest of the story. Even though, like, I thought that was a super interesting part of the story. Originally, like, she isn't killed by the other demon slayer because she protects her brother. Like, she refuses to give in. But then they just put her into a coma, like in a soap opera.
She's got to be the baddest badass of them all.
Oh.
Like, I haven't read too far into this, but the fact that she's got demon blood, she's like, nah, I'm gonna not eat people. I'm just gonna wander
and
around.
she grows up, and then she can shrink her body down so she fits in the basket.
Yeah, but she also grows into this like huge badass woman. Spoiler alert for a couple chapters down the line, but yeah, she's an awesome character.
I am glad she actually wakes up and does. I did genuinely love this. It was a page turner. I think I read the entire volume in less than an hour. It just flew by. And again, for a lot of the reasons that we talked about in the previous segment, a storyline that I could relate to, I had seen a bunch of other times, especially, again, to my point, in video games. Like, this seemed like pretty much, the plot of a JRPG, which I played before. And so I got that. And the dialogue and the action was snappy and everything was working well. It's just that one thing that really bothered me, because she seems so cool. And I get it that, like, you can't spend time with both characters. Maybe that's the reason why manga is they don't get too far into other subplots. They're really focused on the hero's journey and that particular plot right now. They're like, that's the plot we're talking about, and we're not going to do anything else. It's another 6 months. Is she still asleep? Okay, she's still asleep. It's another 9 months later, a couple decades later. I'm a demon slayer. Are you awake? Do you need a glass of water? You need to go to the bathroom? You want something to eat? Like, you just...
She wants human flesh, but you have to put that thing in her mouth so that she doesn't fight anybody.
Yeah. Because she made that promise, or her brother made that promise for her.
Oh, man, that's straight out of Pulp Fiction. She's like gift masking it.
She's waiting for the gift to
Hiccups.
show.
To that point, when they put that bridle in her mouth, I was thinking, how is she going to eat? I was concerned for her safety.
Well, basically, you're starving the woman, the poor woman. I mean, she's a demon. She has to eat human flesh. That's how she has to survive. I think they figure out a way around it in a couple books later. But, like, what's the natural response to that? Oh, I'm going to go to sleep for a long time because I don't have to eat when I'm asleep.
Hibernating.
Yes, correct.
It makes more sense that way. J.A., I wanted to ask you a quick question. What time period does this story occur in? Like, you're good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the Edo period, right? With samurais and...
That's obviously where a lot of people go when they think of Japan and they see samurai swords and whatnot. But this was actually set in the Taisho era, which is much more modern than probably a lot of people think. This is early 1900s. So we're talking like 1912 to 1926.
Wow.
Yeah, so like
That's
during
crazy.
the World War One.
Yeah, about that time. Again, I thought this was like feudal Japan. Like, I genuinely did, because like there was nothing in this book that made me think otherwise. It's all rural. There's no electricity or technology.
No. This follows the Meiji period in Japan, which is known, that's the great modernization of Japan. So if that's when Tom Cruise came over and showed them how to be a good military.
And
So this is following the arrival of Tom Cruise. This is the era after Cruise.
The other question I had for everybody here is, so this was a different interpretation of the word demon, because originally when she gets bit, I was like, oh, she's a vampire now, like, oh, it's got to be vampire, but like, no, because later on in this book it just depends. You have this one demon that's just a bunch of hands, it's 2 eyes and like more hands than I've ever seen on any. He was just grabby.
Well, clearly the author just wanted to do cool shit like that. Like, you can't. There's only one vampire. Like, vampires are vampires. Like, you want to do like weird creatures, and you want to do things with 17 hands, and you want to have things with like one eye. Is there
the hands growing out of the head? That was my favorite one. The one that was just the head and hands.
Yeah, and then later on you get like creepy children and spider ladies and all kinds of weird stuff. So yeah, I think that the author just wanted to spread his wings a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like that one character wanted to spread his hands, but he grew them too small, too close to his head. He couldn't do it. Then he's stuck to that tree.
Chad, the universal thing that I asked you in all manga, did you hate this?
No, and actually, I alluded to this earlier. I actually have some prior experience with this book because I had one of my students. We had a little exchange. She brought in Demon Slayer, and I brought in my Spider-Man Red, which was the manga Spider-Man book. And so I had a jump on the first 3 chapters of this. And no, it's fun. I think One Piece had softened me up. I still definitely lean towards American-style comics. Just because once I'm done with this, I set it down, and it's like candy. Like, I enjoy it while I have it, and then I'll just forget about it. Like, I can't remember character names. I remembered the handy monster and some of the other creatures they fight later on.
Yeah, obviously after One Piece, my younger son started getting really into it. So now we have a ton of these One Piece volumes lying around the house. And I could see him getting into Demon Slayer as well. I liked it. It's a fun romp. I like where not only are they going on a hero's journey, but you as the reader are going on a journey of discovery of the character. Because as you go through this first volume, and I'm sure into the next subsequent volumes, you get to learn more and more about the character, because I think this might be the one of the differences towards American comic books as well, where you have a lot of character buildup right at the beginning. You get a character dump, and then these massive origin stories, and even MCU movies or DCU movies. That's where like the next Batman. How many Batman origin Batmans do we have to watch to see the Batman origin? Right? You can only tell the same story how many times? Well, obviously a lot of times if you're movie studio, but at least in Demon Slayer, it's really stretched out. It's decompressed, the origin story. It's like, his family's dead, but then the whole first volume is he's still in the training session. That would have been like 2 panels in an American comic book.
But they give you what you need. They're like, yeah, he's good at smelling stuff. And that's going to help him.
That is what and he has a really hard head too.
Yeah.
You figure that out, you have to infer.
He just needs to be careful, because if he headbutts somebody and smashes his nose, he could break the nerve endings or whatever Black Widow did in that MCU movie where she smashed her head on the desk so she couldn't smell the old perfume that was preventing her from shooting Draco.
Oh, yes, I do. But that brings it back to like the whole smelling, and eventually he sees the line or the thread or something, and that allows him to do these awesome sword slash wind. I want Ethan to unpack that for me, because that was another part that I was like very confused on, is the how smelling turned into being able to see. Is he like Daredevil?
He controls his breathing, do whatever the he wants.
Yeah, he has enhanced senses. I would say that's probably one of his powers. I mean, he obviously and also has a hard head for whatever reason. I think they're going to get to it eventually, like J.A. was saying. Like, there's a lot more to this Tanjiro than meets the eye. you're reading a manga. This is like manga 101. He's not what he seems to be on the outside. So he's gonna be like the best ever swordsman of all time. Like, it's just that you're gonna get to there eventually. It's just that you're seeing bits and pieces of it right now. You're in Batman Year One for your American readers.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm going to turn the tables on you though. Why there's like so many mangas that you've read over the years. Why did you gravitate towards this one so fiercely that you bought like the entire big box set?
Yeah,
because I know you have.
As you guys can't see because we're not on camera, but I have the entire complete box set of Demon Slayer. I also have a print that I purchased at a Comic-Con, one of my few prints that I've ever purchased. Shout out to the artist Kyle Witkowski. You can go to society6.com/CyanKai to view some of his work. But this is a amazing print of Tanjiro that none of y'all can see, but you have to take my word for it. But yeah, it's Tanjiro, man. I mean, it's tough sometimes to find characters that are this appealing, like right off the bat. He's the nicest dude. He does everything for anybody. He insisted to pay for the basket that he was getting for free.
Yeah, he was real mad about that. That lady wouldn't, just kept trying to give it to him. He's like, take the money!
He's carrying around his grown-ass sister on his back, who's a demon, but he refuses to let her die. And the sword stuff and water figure 7th form and all that stuff's really, really cool. So yeah, that's generally what appealed to me. I mean, my other favorite, anime was Evangelion, and you tried to watch like 2 episodes of it, and you're like, what the? You were judging me pretty hardcore after that. But I could be proud of saying that Demon Slayer may almost replace it as my favorite anime.
Wow,
manga.
That's heavy praise given how much you like Evangelion. I do want to ask you though too, like, how did you find this? Like, did you watch the anime first?
Honestly, what happened was like my daughter heard about it at school, and some of her friends were watching it, so she asked me if she could watch it. So that's what led me down the path of letting her watch a show that was ultimately not appropriate for her. But I was watching it, I was like, this is pretty damn cool. It's on Netflix, and so I just turned it on. Another accessible thing where you can watch One Piece, where you can watch Jujutsu Kaisen, where you can watch Demon Slayer. And so I just sat down and watched a couple episodes. I got immediately hooked and had to finish. I would have to say it's time plus accessibility plus it seems like the thing that everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
Popularity.
You're absolutely right. 2 folks on this show had the youngins bringing these books to them and been like, you should read this, old folks. And both became fans of it. That's awesome. Keep doing that, kids. Keep telling us what we should listen to and watch, because we may not initially say, yeah, that's great, but we are paying attention. We do want to feel like we're young and with it and hip and happening.
And there's also a good ending to this story because I let her start watching Naruto, and that's much more age appropriate for her. So, and she enjoys it. I had to get a Hulu subscription, unfortunately, for her to watch the series that wasn't on Netflix. It's the one with the S that I'm not even going to try to pronounce because it's
Shippuden or whatever.
Shippuden, yes. A very long word that I'm going to butcher the hell out of. So.
My question, Ethan, is how long does Demon Slayer run? You say you have the complete collection is in that one box?
Yep, goes to chapter 23.
There's 23 volumes?
Yes, and they're about the same size as a regular manga that you can pick up anywhere. So then this is like 23 of them. It's reasonably priced too. I want to say it's like $150 on Amazon, but they run deals on it all the time. And you can probably find it at your local comic book shop as well. I'm sure they have a couple copies. And they probably have a couple copies of issue 1 that we read today.
The box set looks like a suitcase.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was my kiddo with One Piece. And then after we got the one, it's like, oh, there's 4 more. Like, what?
And so it's like, it's reasonable. Like, the big joke about One Piece is like, if you get into one, you have like, how many more volumes after that, because it's been running since the 90s, which 1999 was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
What happened to us?
We got old.
Naruto's the same thing, and then Naruto had a son, so then you have to read that too, and so this is 23 chapters, and
well, then this is good. A beginning, middle, and end. That is always nice going into a series, is to know like sooner or later you're gonna get to. Maybe you can tease whether it sticks the landing in the end, but we'll be right back with more of The Last Comic Shop and our ratings of Demon Slayer Volume 1, so stay tuned for that.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
We're on all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Welcome to Victims and Villains. This is the channel where we talk nerd, we talk hope, and we speak nothing else. I'm your host, Captain Nostalgia, and I'm so glad that you're here to join us.
Victims and Villains is a podcast and YouTube channel that marries pop culture and suicide prevention, producing content with the intent to let people know that there is hope and that there is a better way, and that each and every listener has value and worth.
Listen to Victims and Villains on your favorite podcast catcher or on YouTube by searching for Victims and Villains. Also, check out their website, victimsandvillains.net.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where you're not going to hear me croon songs from the 1920s and 30s. We're just going to get to more manga action. That's right. With a 1/4 scale coming from J.A. Scott. So, J.A., what do you got this week for us?
1/4 demon arms. So you can grow them small, you can grow them big, you can grow them out of your neck. You can grow them on your body so you have lots and lots of arms, and they get cut off and can't be grown back or something like that. So demon arms.
It was kind of a cool monster. I won't lie. That was arguably my favorite part of the book, is that final goes into the woods and, I've killed all the other ones that were trained by your master, and now I'll get you. And I thought it was an awesome way to end. Although, you know what? I'm going to start off with my rating. My rating is, I'm going to go with a solid 3. I know that seems to be the common rating around The Last Comic Shop, but I really do agree that it's a 3. It cannot be a 4 because the sister, who I thought was a super cool character, at least in this particular volume, falls asleep halfway through and nothing ever happens with her. And I felt bad for her. She's just laying there asleep. And it's like 6 months later and then a year later. And it was just not good. There's also the whole notion, you get to the end of this volume and he does this super awesome move, but you don't get to see him kill the monster. At least kill the monster in this volume. Come on, kids. Come on, you built it up. You leave that as the cliffhanger? No, make it that there's a bigger monster behind it. Make it something. That was an unsatisfying end of Volume 1. Sure, it made me want to read Volume 2, but that peeved me a little bit. But anyways, it's good. I genuinely enjoyed myself with this, and it was a page turner. Although to Chad's point, I couldn't remember anybody's name if you told me. I'm glad Ethan gave us the 10-cent synopsis, because I would have been just like Sword Guy and his demon sister. So 3 demon arms. J.A.?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a slightly higher. I'm going to give it 3.5. So one of the demon arms, if there was 4 demon arms, one of them got chopped in half by that sword man. I liked it more than I liked One Piece, maybe because it was a little bit more samurai influenced, and I loved the masks. I loved historical elements of the Taisho period, and we get a lot more of that later on. This is one that I think I will stick with. I'm going to have a look around the local bookstores, because we do have a lot of manga here and see if that's one of the series that took off in the Philippines. And if it is, I'll probably be picking up a couple of the volumes for me to read, and they'll end up in my son's library probably, because that's where everything else manga has found its way.
Sounds about right.
All right. Well, sounds about right that you're going to give us your rating, Chad.
I enjoyed this. I really did. You know, I read on into the second and third volume, but it's like you brought up earlier. My big knock on it is it's like candy. I don't retain it. You know, like I don't remember a lot after I'm done. And I'm sure if I went and picked it up again, it would come back. Fun. It seems like it has the best of the manga tropes in my mind. Like I can dig the hero's journey things. I like your characters that have like one or two weird esoteric power sets. Like, oh, he's good at smelling, and that's going to help him with demons. There's just enough ridiculousness and enough samurai training, and I can see why this appeals to kids so much. Those kids are on their own journeys and figuring out who they are, and you have these stories, and it is much more accessible, and all that stuff tracks and makes sense. And I just wish American comics could figure out a way to do that, but instead they're just going to sell you Watchmen in digest form and hope it's the same thing. It's nice you can get affordable copies of Watchmen, I guess, but like that's not going to hook kids the way that Demon Slayer does. So when it's all said and done, I don't know if I'm as hooked as J.A. or Ethan are, but I enjoyed it. It's another one. If my kiddo latched onto this, I could see myself going and just buying that box set and be like, all right, let's go through this. But I'm going to agree with Jay where it's a 3.5 out of 4. What are we doing? Samurai swords, brains,
demon arms.
Demon arms, baby demon arms. The arm goiters are sticking out.
They cut off its head, and then it started to grow back the rest of its body. But for some reason, it grew the arms first instead of the neck. I don't understand. You would grow the neck first, right? That's the next thing down. You wouldn't move, I guess, unless you're like, I'm thinking about this too much. Ethan, is this a 4?
Yeah, I was going to say, how many arms can I have? Yes, solid 4. Any more arms, and they'll just get in my way.
You're serious? Like this is the best manga that you've ever read?
Yeah, it's the best. I'll just say it. I'll make a statement. Play the trumpets. Play the fanfare. It's the best manga I've ever read. So.
Wow. So if you were going to get somebody into manga, this is the first one you'd give them?
Absolutely.
Even more than One Piece. You'd be like, no, read Demon Slayer.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Just because One Piece is so accessible, but yeah, I'd probably tell them Demon Slayer.
Who do you think is more charming, Monkey D. Luffy or this guy?
Oh, I mean, well, charming. I mean, nothing's got charm on my boy Luffy, but yeah, Tanjiro's like the kindest, sweetest man.
And he can cut a stone in half.
That's right.
There you go.
A big stone.
Yeah. Come on, he's like the Peter Parker of manga. Sweet cakes, and he's that.
That was a great observation by you right then. He is the Peter Parker of manga.
Hey, that's why they call me the host with the most. One other thing they call me is the guy that makes people give recommendations every single week. This is that part of every single show where we put my friends on the spot to come up with other comic books that you can pick up at your local comic book shop in addition to Demon Slayer Volume 1, which we really hope you do. And I think we're going to go ahead and start off with Ethan because he's saying, yeah, pick up Volume 1, but then continue on. Ethan, there's got to be other awesome volumes you can pick from, right?
And I'm not saying get the box set, even though I am saying get the box set. What I want you to get is actually Volume 8, which is the one I was going to recommend for us to read because it is the one based on the highest grossing Japanese film of all time. It is the Mugen Train story that deals with the fire Hashira. Tanjiro, fast forward a little bit, goes into an elite corps of demon slayers called the Hashira. One of his influences is the Fire Hashira. Something happens to him. I'll just say that. So I don't want to give any spoilers out for somebody that wants to read it, but it's very, very good.
Put you on the spot here. If you read Volume 1, and could you skip to Volume 8, or are you going to be completely
You might miss a little bit of stuff, so maybe get 2 through 7. But I want to say that this is pretty self-contained, if I remember. The Mugen Train was a movie, so it's a self-contained storyline. I don't think you'll be too confused if you just pick up Volume 8.
Very cool. All right, Chad, what do you got for us? I think it's also manga influenced.
Yeah, so I'm going back to my favorite from whenever I was 10 years old and getting into comics like kids are getting into these manga these days. And my favorite artist was Rob Liefeld. And he was talking on his podcast about his manga influence and how that affected his art. And so...
Did that podcast be Robservations?
Yeah.
Because we did not get mentioned in our 200th episode. I was feeling like we had missed an opportunity.
Yeah, what did Rob have to say about Watchmen? Did he have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Although he has worked with Alan Moore fairly extensively. I mean, they took over Supreme and all that other stuff.
All right.
Promethea. Well, I guess he did Glory, not Promethea. Promethea was the extension. Anyway, so one of the things Rob Liefeld is doing currently, he is self-publishing. And he sells individual issues through his Whatnot store. But he's doing a story called The Last Blood, and it's his take on the end of his extreme characters, his extreme universe. But one of the coolest things he's done is he released a manga edition where he is taking his traditional comic, which you could buy in regular traditional comic form, but he is giving it the manga treatment with the gray tones, with the action lines. And there is no artist out there, I think, whose style lends itself better to that manga style action in those gray tones. It really it takes things to the next level. And so they're hard to get on the secondary market. I think the plan is eventually he's going to release it as a trade, but you have to track down the manga edition of Rob Liefeld's Last Blood just to see it. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Wow. So you want to see Rob Liefeld do more of this, right? Or is this like kind of a novelty and you don't... Long story short, if Rob Liefeld wanted to do this forever from now on, would you be upset with him, or is like, no, I still need my regular Rob Liefeld?
Well, no, due to budgetary concerns, I can't buy all the stuff that I want. I had to pick between, do I want the regular standard comic edition or this manga one? It fits so well. And I didn't realize the puzzle pieces were there, but they are. And you go back and you look at all the other stuff and oh man, if this were done manga style instead of this style, that would have been so much cooler. And you can visualize it now. You get a frame of reference. I don't know how much more stuff Rob Liefeld is gonna put out there, honestly, but I think it's just such a fun experiment to see. So I don't know, I'm just reveling in the novelty of it. If he wanted to do more manga stuff, I'd be all for it though.
Okay.
Andy, you asked what the appeal of manga is. J.A., what is all of this art? What does it look like?
Oh, it's all black and white. There's no color. It's grayscale, baby.
There you go, baby. That's why it's appealing. Grayscale, baby. Print it on newspaper and you're going to like it.
That's right. Put it on the cheap paper. We don't need the expensive paper. Manga's teaching us. In any case, one other thing that I want to teach you about is one of the recommendations that I hope that you check out this Halloween season, because I check it out every Halloween season, and it deals with a very famous comic book character who fought vampires for the first time. Yes, he was a demon slayer in his own right, and that is the Caped Crusader Batman. Two of my favorite issues that Batman has ever been in harken back to the early days of Batman. I'm talking about within the first 5 or 6 issues of Detective Comics after his first appearance. We're talking about Detective Comics 31 and 32 with Batman versus the vampires, aka the Mad Monk story. That's right. This is a story that was written by Gardner Fox with assists by Bill Finger, but like Gardner Fox's original story with Batman, Dr. Death, Gardner Fox was really interested in expanding the mythology of Batman beyond just being kind of a shadow ripoff. So he started giving him supervillains, as I said, the Dr. Death, and now the Mad Monk being like a truly super villain with supernatural powers, the ability to transform into a wolf, the mass hypnotism, gave him an evil castle to hang out with. But not only that, but Gardner Fox introduced a lot of other parts of the Batman mythology that we take for granted, including the Batarang. That's right. Issue 31 of Detective Comics is the first time you ever see the Batarang in a issue of Batman, as well as the Bat Gyro, giving him his utility belt with the gas pellets and the poison pellets and ways of getting out of traps and things like that, and also giving Batman Julie Madison.
I'm so disappointed in that. They loved their alliteration. Peter Parker, Vicky Vale, Julie Jacobson.
I know.
They had it. They could have given... They let me down on that one.
But yeah, Batman's first love interest, his fiancée at the time, who gets kidnapped by the Mad Monk, and his femme fatale sidekick, Dahlia, and it just takes him, across the sea to Hungary, and it's just a great story. And it's like 22 pages in total between the two issues. Like, it's not a very long story, and sure, it may be a little bit archaic for folks that are reading comic books nowadays to read, but every Halloween, I always go back and reading. It's kind of like watching one of those Universal monster movies for me. There's something about that 1930s pulpy horror, and this Batman story has it in spades. So check it out. You can get it not only in the greatest Batman stories ever told, which was the first time I read it way back in the day, but you can also get it in Batman the Golden Age Omnibus Volume 1, which Ethan got me last Christmas. J.A.?
Okay, I'm going to recommend a new continuing series from Marvel, and this actually relates to the book that we're covering on next week's show, which is Blood Hunt. This is Blood Hunters, and picks up at the end of Blood Hunt, when there are all these vampires running around in the Marvel Universe, and the Blood Hunters...
A team of Fred Dryers, impressing like grandma.
Yes.
Looking cool.
And that team includes Dagger from Cloak and Dagger, Elsa Bloodstone, the White Widow, which is what got me looking at the book, Hollow's Eve, and Miles Morales' Spider-Man.
Who's now vampire?
Ooh,
who's now a vampire?
Oh, don't spoil next week's episode.
Sorry.
It's only 2 issues in. I don't know where they're going to go with it, but it's by Erica Schultz and artist Robert Gill. And the weird Blood Coven shows up. So if you like the Blood Coven, they're in this. If you didn't like the Blood Coven, they're in this.
Just wait till next week and you hear what Chad has to say about the Blood Coven.
I have to say something real quick, a quick anecdote about Miles Morales. You're buying Halloween costumes for the kids, and local Walmart had plenty of Spider-Man costumes, completely sold out of Miles Morales costumes. So representation matters.
There you go. And one other thing that matters in terms of representation is making sure that you represent us in terms of your podcasting taste. That's right. The Last Comic Shop is going to be around for another 200 episodes. My co-host may not know that, but I'm planting our flag right here and now that we'll be around for a really, really long time reading comic books.
Listen, faithful listeners, Andy already has the shows booked through halfway into 2025. Poor Jay has been trying to breed value community for the last 6 years.
We're never forgetting Archer and Armstrong. It's on the calendar. But make sure that you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing so you don't miss any of these episodes. Whether it's Blood Hunt next week, whether it's the Venom review, we're going to have George back from Shortbox Summary to do that. We're going to read Archer and Armstrong. The Death of the Stacys is coming up, as well as DC Ember. That's right. For those folks that are already thinking about Christmas, even though it's not fucking Halloween yet.
Wow, pumpkin spice on the attack.
And also Dark Knight Returns. Aren't you fitting that in too?
You know what? We only have so many shows.
They'll pencil you in for 2027. We've only done 200 of these. Sometimes I forget how they go. Yeah, so you can follow us on the socials at Last Comic Shop. And then we also encourage everybody to get out there. While we are the Last Comic Shop podcast we hope you need, we don't want to be the last shop itself. So get out there and support your local comic shops. Maybe that is by asking if they have copies of Demon Slayer, or asking if they have even more copies of Demon Slayer, so you can get up to that volume 8 Ethan was talking about. Maybe it's going way back in the Wayback Machine and getting those Mad Monk Batman issues, or tracking down the specialty Rob Liefeld Last Blood manga editions. They're beautiful. Or even go to the new stuff and finding those Blood Hunters, as well as Blood Hunt for next week, gang. All that and more waits for you at your local comic shop. And then you can also circle back to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find what else, J.A.?
We always have a link to our merch store. We've got our special Halloween edition Last Comic Shop t-shirt still on sale. Coffee mugs, hats, tote bags. This week only, you can get a t-shirt with extra armholes. So if you've got more than...
Why don't you just buy a pair of scissors? You're right, Jay. You should buy the ones that have the extra armholes and then make even more armholes with the scissors. You can be like Charlie Brown and cut those when he's trying to make his ghost costume.
Everything always got to come around to Charlie Brown.
Ethan, what should folks do again?
Smash that 5-star review, baby. Get it for us. This has been the biggest year of the podcast, but you know what? 2025 is going to be even bigger than this one. So this is the best time for you to get involved with the Last Comic Shop podcast. Make sure that you subscribe on any of your pod-catching platforms. If you like what we're doing, make sure to smash that 5-star review. I don't know how we can improve on what we're doing right now, because this is one of the best shows that is out there for comic books. And also, if you're looking to buy some supplies for all of your comic book collecting needs, please visit bcwsupplies.com. Use our promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Save yourself 10% on stuff you're going to be buying anyways. You know, bags, boxes. If you're into trading cards, you got trading card supplies there. They got everything that you need to be a collector of comics and trading cards and whatever hobbies that you're into.
Sports memorabilia.
Sports memorabilia.
That's right. You can get, like, you got those footballs because you're into the college football. You're into the basketballs. You got the things with the autograph baseballs, autograph album cover things. They got all kinds of stuff for anybody that collects.
This is my favorite time of the year. All the sports are going crazy. We got MLB playoffs. We got kicking off NHL. We got kicking off, NBA. We're deep into the NFL season. We got college football. If you're a collector and you need supplies, please go to bcwsupplies.com and use our promo code at checkout, LCSPOD, to save yourself 10%.
Heck yeah. We do not charge for content here at the Last Comic Shop. We do not. So using that promo code not only saves you a little bit of cash, but also helps us out in making sure that season 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 146, they all happen.
LFG, baby, LFG.
That's the one that has that Unity story in it, right?
Okay, that's all the time for the Last Comic Shop we had this week. Until next week, I was the host, Danny Larson. I was joined by my regular co-host, Jay Scott and Chad Smith, as well as my wonderful brother, Ethan Larson. And we hope that you stay safe, stay spooky. And remember, if your friends don't understand your crooning, buy a record player, damn it.
This is how we're going to appeal to the kids. Yeah. Here's a bunch of stuff
that
you have no idea.
That was the number one song of 1952 by the Ink Spots. Shine on, Harvest Moon.
This book wasn't even set in 1952.
When are you reading Evil Ernie? That too.
Evil Ernie.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2024 Black Angus production.